Let's do another retirement deep dive together. And if you haven't joined me on one of these before, I'm Azul. I've been a financial advisor for over 20 years, and the goal of my channel is to help answer the questions you have about retirement. So in today's video, we're going to look at a situation where somebody's 55 years old and they have $800,000 saved. And their question is, Azul, can I retire? And if so, what does that look like? So instead of using the fancy, expensive software that I use at work, I'm going to use a free online tool so that you can follow along, and just as importantly, so you can tweak things based on your situation. The site we're using is honestmath.com. I am not an affiliate. I like it because it's a high-level tool, and it uses something called the Monte Carlo simulation, which I think is important. Okay, so we go to honestmath.com, and the first thing we do is we enter our personal information. So here under name, I'm just naming the scenario, somebody 55 years old, $800,000, and I'm assuming that at full retirement age, this person is going to get $2,500 a month in Social Security. And they're 55 years old. I put in a birthday to January of 1969. Life expectancy about 90. Okay, so Social Security, if you take Social Security at 62, which I'm assuming this person will, you're going to get 70% of your full retirement age benefit, which is at $2,500. So 70% of $2,500 is $1,750. I'm assuming it's going to grow at 2%. I'm inflating everything. I'm just assuming inflation is 2%. Okay, so that's the information there. Now let's go to the next section, portfolio. And here I'm inputting the portfolio balance. The portfolio balance is $800,000. I'm assuming a mix of 60% stocks and 40% bonds. This is not a recommendation. I'm not saying that 55-year-olds should have this allocation. It's just what I'm putting in. It's what the program defaults to. And I think it's a decent default. Okay, the next tab is expenses. How much money do you want to be able to spend? So in this case, I'm putting in $4,000 a month. Again, I'm inflating it at 2%. The taxable portion of the portfolio is 75%. Now, for most of us, we're going to have three buckets of money that we're going to pull out of in retirement. We're going to have a regular 401k or a regular IRA. We're going to have a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k. And the third one is just our normal taxable account like at the bank. So I'm assuming that 3/4 of this money is going to be taxed as it comes out, just like a regular IRA and a regular Roth would be. The taxable portion of retirement income, mainly going to be Social Security here, is going to be 80%. Many people are surprised to hear that Social Security payments can be taxable. They can be taxed, and currently about 40% of all people that receive Social Security payments do get taxed on it. And I'm putting in an effective tax rate of 20%. A lot of people would say, Azul, that sounds a little high, but you have to remember many people live in states that also have income taxes or cities that have income tax. So this is the combination of federal, state, and local if you have those where you live. Okay, expected returns, I just left in the default for honest math. It's 8% for stocks, it's 4.5% for bonds. If you think that's high, if you think that's low, you can go into the tool and change it. Okay, and then I also am checking what's called fat tails. And I'm checking fat tails because this Monte Carlo simulation, which is the statistical tool to give us a feel of how likely we are to succeed, it uses what's called a Gaussian, a bell curve distribution, and the stock market doesn't have those really thin tails at the end of that bell curve that we all learned about in high school. It tends to have more returns on the high end and more returns on the low end. So fat tails is what the term is to say. It's not going to go down to near zero probability. It's going to be higher than that. Okay, then we hit show me, and it shows the results here. And you can see, unfortunately, these results are results that most people are not going to be comfortable retiring. Not everybody. You can see the upper end of this range. So again, this tool is using a Monte Carlo simulation. And what that's doing is it's taking actual stock market returns and running simulations using those results, but randomizing the results, the stock market returns, and coming up with, you can see at the top there under simulations, we ran 10,000 simulations based on your information. So think about that as 10,000 lifetimes. Sometimes people get lucky and the stock market does really well at the beginning, which is the upper end of that blue range. That is the beginning of the luckiest 20%. There's people even luckier than that in this range. And then the lower end of that is the unlucky people, the people that got bad stock market returns early on. And that's the lower end of the range. And there's people that have done even worse than that. And then you can see the dark blue line, that's the median line, that half the people have done better, half the people have done worse. In this case, they ran 10,000 simulations. So in this case, that dark blue line represents the case where 5,000 simulations did better and 5,000 simulations did worse. Okay, so you can see this person, half of the people are running out of money at 82, and the unlucky people are running out of money at 74. So few people are going to be comfortable with that. It doesn't mean that our person here can't retire. Let's keep playing. So I had expenses of $4,000 with being able to spend $4,000 a month. What if we drop that down to $3,500? And stay with me. I know that this is a pretty Spartan retirement by United States standards. It doesn't mean you couldn't live comfortably on that. It'd be tough to do in the United States, but there's definitely parts of the world where you could really enjoy life and live very comfortably on $3,500. So that's really all I'm changing here. Now let's see what the results of just changing it by $500 a month. What's the result? Well, in this case, in the worst case, people are running out of money at about 80. And remember, people don't just run out of money. They don't just take this course down and say, okay, well, I've spent my last amount of money. Now what am I going to do? You start making adjustments along the way. So it sounds bad, but the reality is you make adjustments as you see this coming. And the further along that you have, the more visibility you have, the smaller the change that you have to make because you have more time. Okay, so in this case, the unlucky people are running out of money at 80. The median case, the dark blue line, never runs out of money. In fact, they pass away with, looks like about $350,000. And then the lucky people are passing away with $2.5 million, I'm sorry. So it just shows it's not whether one person did something right and the other person did something wrong. Part of life, obviously, is luck. When we retire and how the stock market does after we retire. Same people, both 60% in stocks, 40% in bonds, but very different results. And, candidly, it's the same thing with our health. None of us know. Some of us are going to live healthy and be super healthy and pass away in our sleep in our 90s and have a fairly easy journey. And unfortunately, others of us are going to have health issues younger in our life or have a tougher end of life situation. So it's the same thing with your finances. People don't like to hear this, but there is some luck involved. There is some randomness as to who succeeds and who doesn't. Okay. But we don't want to rely on randomness. We don't want to rely on luck. And many of us probably don't want to rely on living on $3,500 a month. So let's run this scenario again. This time I'm going to do something crazy. I'm going to increase our expenses to $5,000 a month. Now we're at $60,000, which is close to what the average U.S. household spends. So I think many of us could retire comfortably, certainly have a roof over our head, food on the table, and have a decent sense of security. So $5,000 a month is really all I'm changing there. But now I want to go to the personal information. And here what I'm doing is I'm assuming, this person's 55 years old. What if they made $1,000 a month until they were 62 years old for the next 7 years? So now the exchange is, okay, they have to do a little bit of work. They're not completely retired. But in exchange, instead of spending $3,500 a month, they get to spend $5,000 a month. That's a lot. That extra $1,500 a month provides a very different retirement for you. So a lot of people would be willing to make that trade-off. So they have a part-time job or a side hustle that they like to do that they get paid for. Okay, Leaving Social Security alone, still getting it at 62 in the $1,750 a month. Remember, $1,750 is at $2,500 at full retirement age, but because they're taking it at 62, they get 70% of that, which is $1,750. So here we run the simulation, and you can see now this looks a lot better, doesn't it? I know a lot of people that would be very comfortable with something like this. So the good news is they get to spend more money, and they have a lower likelihood of running out of money. Let me explain the chart. In this case, they're running out of money. The unlucky people are running out of money at about 85. The lucky people are passing away with over $4.5 million. And the median person passes away with about $1.5 million. So this is a chart that a lot of folks would be comfortable with, saying, yeah, okay, this looks good. So what's the trade-off? The trade-off is you have to make an extra $1,000 a month. But not forever, just until you reach 62. And then you're retired. So again, not everybody wants to do that. Some people would say, hey, well, I'm just burnt out. I want to stop. I want to get off of the roller coaster. So no, I'm not going to make an extra $1,000 a month. Okay, now I want to play, before I let you go, I want to play around with one other thing that I think is really important, and that is, let's look at the impact of taking Social Security at 62, at 67, which for most of us, if you're not receiving Social Security yet, your full retirement age is likely going to be 67, and then also at 70. Okay, so everything's staying the same here. I'm going into personal information, and you'll see that everything's staying the same. I still have this person working from 55 to 62, making $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. But now, instead of the Social Security being 70% at $2,500, I have the Social Security being right at $2,500 because they're taking it at full retirement age. And when we run the simulation on this, you can see it's basically unchanged, okay? Which frankly surprised me. I'll tell you why it surprised me in a moment. So let's go back and see what happens if they wait till 70. Now, I mentioned earlier, if you retire early, if you retire at 60, if you start taking Social Security at 62, it's essentially 6% per year. Not quite, but it's about 6% per year that it goes down. So you're going to end up with 70% if you retire 5 years earlier, 70% of your full retirement. But the good news is on the upside, it increases by 8% a year. So if this person waits until they're 70 years old in order to retire, in order to start taking Social Security, you can see here, they're going to get 1.24 times the $2,500, which turns out to be $3,100 a month. Their retirement now, their Social Security, I keep saying retirement, sorry. Their Social Security now is going to be at 70, again, $3,100 a month. And let's see what that ends up looking like for them. And again, not really that changed. It actually went down a little bit. You can see that the median case, how much people die with, has dropped from closer to 1.5 million to closer to $1 million. Okay, so why is that? So essentially, this person is somewhat indifferent between those three scenarios. Now, you can do a Social Security break-even calculation. I told you earlier that I was a little surprised that it didn't look better when the person waited, because in this case, we're looking at, they're passing away at 90. In general, the break-even for most people, this is not a forecast. There's all kinds of free online Social Security calculators, and more importantly, there's financial advisors to help you with this. But the break-even tends to be 77 years old for most people, 77 to 82, beyond which you would be better off waiting to 70. So I thought the results were going to look better if we waited till 70. Here's an example of one online calculator. But you have to be really careful because these things get complicated very quickly. I mentioned to you earlier that many people are surprised to hear that Social Security is taxable, so you have to take into account taxation. You also, and this is all the reasons to work with a professional. I think a tool like honestmath.com is great for getting us in the ballpark to seeing, okay, does this make sense? Am I close? Am I getting close? But then when it comes time to actually pull the trigger, you don't want to do this yourself. But trust me, for sure when you're getting ready to retire, that's a huge decision. You want to make that decision with all the quality information that you can. And I do think, admittedly I'm biased. I've been a financial advisor for over 20 years, but I think you want a professional by your side, somebody that's helped hundreds of families go through this transition, and they might know some of the things that you might not be thinking about. Again, taxation of Social Security. Which buckets of regular IRAs, Roth IRAs, or taxable money, which buckets you take money out of. A lot of families initially, when they first retire, are excited because they can control their tax rate. They can spend the money out of their bank account or out of their Roth IRA first and actually have no taxable income. Well, they're probably going to regret that later because the U.S. tax bracket really benefits, has a much lower burden on your initial money. Your lower tax brackets, there's 7 tax brackets in the United States, and the 2 lowest ones are 10% and 12%. That's relatively inexpensive taxation on your money. So you want to look at filling up those buckets and optimize on minimizing your tax over your lifetime, not minimizing your tax in one single year, because after those 2 lower brackets, that 10% and 12%, then the taxes jump up quite a bit. So you want to take advantage of those lower tax brackets. You also want to make sure that you take advantage of what I call the youth of your senior years. And that's what this video up here is. It's not just about getting to retirement and enjoying retirement, but it's about enjoying the journey. And this is 7 things that I want you to stop doing in your 50s to enjoy the journey more. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in there. Bye-bye.